Hello, everyone. Hello. Good afternoon. If you're joining us from Eastern Time, thank you for joining us and for waiting. We had some technical issues today, so thank you for being here. We'll start right away because we are a little behind. So we are NJ Tribes and SBDC. So NJ Tribes, for those of you who are new, it's a weekly webinar. It's created basically to help New Jersey small businesses owners start, grow, and thrive. I'm your host today, Laura Marabru. And I'm going to present her soon, but today we're going to have someone joining us from our tech team, and our tech team can help you with no-cost pitch to proposal consulting, training, and events we provide starting at zero cost and exclusive small business tech resources. So if you have any questions or you need any assistance, please reach out to njsbdc.com/tech team. So our agenda for today is that we're going to go over some headlines that might be interested to you. And then we're going to start our presentation, the reason why you're here. And then if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A box. You're going to have our chat and Q&A box. But if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A specifically so we don't miss it. So here are our small business headlines for today. And then, so first of all, we have NJEDA that has established a new diversity finance advisory board. I'm going to drop all the links in the chat so you can have it and you go over them. But basically, here are some of the members that board includes. If you're interested, again, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. And then SBA marks National Disaster Preparedness Month. It's that time of the year. You can have more information here. You can have some resources for hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, floods, hail, and even cybersecurity plan from the SBA. This is a webinar, Procurement Con 23. We are also going to be there, and that's going to be on Saturday, October 7th. You can register at the link here and reserve your spot. And this is also available to you, NJ Working Paper Progress. You can see all the information here and also register on the link that will be provided to you in chat. That's the New Jersey hiring process 14, and you can see all the information that is now digital. Just some things to keep in mind before the webinar starts or the presentation starts. Again, please type your questions in the Q&A box so we don't miss any of them. And complete a 3-minute survey so you can get all the webinar resources, including the presentation. So without further ado, we're going to start with our Navigating SBIR STTR Application Outcomes or Setback webinar. And for that, today we're having Cheryl Vickroy. She's from our tech team. And again, if you have any questions for the tech team, you can reach out. Cheryl, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here again in this series. And I'm opening up my presentation, getting ready to share my screen. So you should be able to see that in a moment. Gloria, you can see that, right?
Yep. I haven't seen any interactions, by the way, from our audience. So if you guys can hear us properly and you're listening and watching us, please let us know in the chat so we know you're here. I see that Gloria raised her hand. Christian Rodriguez, great. Steve Ladden, great. Thank you for joining us. Well, Cheryl, or yours.
Great, thank you so much. So as Gloria said, this is about number 7 in a series that I've been presenting since earlier in 2023. And today, this topic was really fun for me to work on. It made me think a lot about situations I've encountered over the course of my career, what to do once you've submitted. There are several things that you can do to either better prepare to receive funding, or if the outcome of your proposal request is declined, there are also some things that you can do, and I'm going to cover all of these things today. So it's a pleasure to be here. Just a brief review. Some of you may have seen me present before, but it's possible that we have some new people as well joining us today. So I've been working in this realm. First, I had an early career in industry where I had lots and lots of experience in general management. And after that, I took a second career as an entrepreneur, both in a small business myself, but also focusing on acquiring or acquisition of SBIR, STTR funding for clients, for others. And in doing that, I've helped people acquire far more than 150 million. I stopped counting a while ago. I also have led 2 early stage firms as the CEO, as well as participated in 3 or 4 others, all of which are, except one was a failure, but all of the other ones were either successfully acquired or are still going concerns, which is wonderful to know. And I've done some other things along the way. For a while, I worked in Wisconsin for the Center for Technology Commercialization, which is roughly the equivalent of the New Jersey SBDC Tech Team. For 15 years, I've been teaching students in a master's program in biotechnology, and I've also invested in early stage technology firms, several along the way, both as an individual angel, but also as a limited partner in Bell Capital USA. So again, these first couple of slides are really just a bit of a review about the program in case we have some new attendees today. So SBIR, STTR stands for Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer. So in any case, in order to be eligible, you have to be a small business applicant, which is less than 500 employees. Ideally, you have invented or developed some sort of innovation, which has technical novelty and a very high risk associated with it, along with IP potential or potential to protect your intellectual property in your small business. Essentially, the first steps are always to prove feasibility, or what we call proof of concept, and then move on to prototyping per the market needs. In the SBIR realm, the small business stands alone, but as an applicant, but in the STTR realm, there is a sub-awardee involved in the application. And often this might be a university or a college. Essentially, it's a research institution that's partnering with you, and they have additional resources and capabilities that the small business lacks, but needs to have access to in order to carry forward with the project. So this graphic shows just kind of graphically what I said a moment ago. There are 3 different phases in each of these programs: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. In phase 1, again, we're proving feasibility. In phase 2, we're prototyping, and phase 3 is actually launching a commercial product into the marketplace. So there are different activities associated with each. Today, because we're talking about post-submission, I'm just putting this slide up briefly. We won't talk in detail about this, but I may refer to it as we move forward. So our agenda today focuses on making use of your wait time. Once you submit, a proposal to the federal government, there usually is a period of about 6 months or so, roughly, before you are funded. But there are things that you can do during this period, and we'll talk about them with today's agenda in terms of making use of that time for your own the benefit of your own business. You can both plan to receive an award, doing certain activities, and also, of course, we'll talk a little bit at the end about what to do if your proposal was rejected. As you wait, you want to be sure that you watch your email, because that's how you'll be notified of any progress or any information from the agency to which you've submitted. So let's assume for the first part of our presentation today that you are going to receive an award. You're confident and you feel good about the process. You think you're very likely to receive an award. How can you prepare for funding? Well, a question that often comes up is, can you work ahead on the technical development once you've sent in your scope of work? Are you able to work ahead on technical development? Now, today, when we work through this presentation, I'm going to give several examples, but unfortunately, answers like this often depend upon which agency you're applying to. So, for example, I've put some text here for the National Science Foundation. They actually allow working ahead. It's called pre-award spending, up to 90 days in advance of an award. So in other words, you can start spending on your own, working on the project, up to 3 months in advance of an award. But know that that is at your own risk. It's at the risk of the recipient. In other words, if you receive an award, you're able to bill the government for the scope of work that you proposed, that you began working on 90 days prior. However, in the case that you're rejected for an award, you can't bill the government for that. You have to take it upon yourself. But this does, importantly, allow you to get a head start on your work and may keep if you've hired employees and such, may keep them busy during this period while you're waiting. So that gives you a 3 months head start if you've applied to NSF. Other agencies differ on this, and this is where we come in at the tech team. If you'd like to reach out to us and ask a question about your specific agency, we can look up and see how they treat this issue. This text that I've put here is very specifically from the policy and procedure guide. NSF tends to, in my experience, they tend to publish a lot more about the workings behind the curtain, let's say. So they publish a lot about how the process works and referencing some of the accounting guidelines, etc. Some of the agencies don't do that, so we may have to check with them, in different ways to find out the answer to this question. But as a review, the scope always has to equal the budget, and thus, we're talking about work that was inside the proposed scope. Of course, if you have other work that you need to do to also advance the maturity of your technology and it's not been proposed to the federal government, you can go ahead and do that at any point, again, using non-federal monies. So the scope has to equal the budget for the work that you proposed. These were some important questions from a prior presentation that I made, but really the key one here is how much time does it really take to convene a team and get everyone pulling in the same direction so that you can actually start as soon as the award is made and be very productive right away. Other ways of making additional use of the wait time. Well, you can further assess your development strategy for your product and for your business. Have you done all that you can or can afford to do at this point to further development so that you can start right away when you receive the authority to do so? Certainly, a strong start can put you in a much better position for any follow-on phase 2 award. And especially if you're a very early stage startup, what kind of policies and procedures and even internal processes should you think about to facilitate future project management? What other relationships might you need to develop or nurture in order to be ready when the time comes? So these are the questions that we ask each of you, and that we ask you to think about in terms of your own business success. So recall that the point of view that we take is that a small business is the applicant, especially if you come from an almost exclusively technical background. You may never have built a business before. While the phase 1 work is mainly technical, there are some things that you as a business also have to build or develop internally in order to be ready to manage money and so on and so forth. So in addition to the registrations that you did in order to submit your proposal, your small business must also be registered within the state that you operate. Perhaps you need to confirm your lease agreement if you don't have a space yet, and you need to have that ready and waiting for you at the time that you receive an award. Maybe a month or so prior, you can confirm that the space is still available, etc. You always are thinking about your business being aimed towards commercialization, with the business being the instrument to further develop the work. And sometimes, again, especially if you don't have a business background, if you have only a technical background, building a business requires yet another set of skills beyond research and development and experimentation. So you may need to add some consultants or service providers or even staff to help you build up the business side of things. Ask yourself, is your environment ready? Are the team members' skills sufficient for doing things like hiring, onboarding, setting up payroll, figuring out who gets paid and when? It's possible that you may have some people on your staff already who can fill dual roles. That is, if you have a well-rounded technician, for example, can you put them to work collecting and organizing and maybe even inputting invoices into an accounting system? Who do you have with project management skills that can not only oversee the technical work, but also coordinate with all of the activities that are related to the business? Nowadays, we commonly hear the term fractional CEO, and that means someone who has a business background and is qualified in certain respects to operate as a so-called CEO, but they are doing that instead of for one large business, they're doing that for many, well, maybe not many, but let's say several smaller businesses. And so you get a fraction of their time and attention, but accordingly, you only pay them a fraction of what you would pay for an ordinary full-time manager or a full-time CEO. These postings I often see on LinkedIn. Many people have entered this area and are willing to do this on a fractional basis. So if you feel like you need someone to do that, you can look around and find someone in your area who might be able to help you. One thing that you want to consider or ask your fractional CEO or your business, staff to consider is the timing of your award payments. You probably already know that there are many deadlines for the application around the calendar. Likewise, if the awards are made about 6 months after your submission, then the awards can also happen in any quarter or month around the calendar. It depends upon the agency that you're thinking of applying to and what their timing is. But importantly, this may have a very important impact on your business and or your personal taxes that are due. Why? Well, some agencies pay a chunk of money up front. Others reimburse you for costs that you incur related to your award. So if you're receiving money up front from an agency, say, for example, the National Science Foundation, and that comes in the last quarter of the year, they usually pay 25% up front. If it comes in the last quarter, that's a fair chunk of money to try to spend quickly so that you don't show a profit for that calendar year and have to pay taxes more than you ordinarily otherwise would, have to pay additional taxes on your award money. So we need to carefully check which agency you're applying to for timing and amounts of funding that comes in, and think about whether or not that might affect the calendar year for your taxes. NIH, as I mentioned a moment ago, and many other agencies pay by reimbursement. They have a totally different system of payment. And in that case, you shouldn't have a profit coming in the last quarter of the year that you may have to worry about. However, say you're applying to USDA. USDA has many seasonal issues around crop growth. If you're putting crops in the ground and you need them to grow up for a certain period of time. So there may be some other seasonal things that you want to think about with the timing of your payments. What other things should you keep an eye on just to prepare the business for an award? Well, there are many external things. In business, we call it a pestle analysis. And really, that's just an acronym that stands for political, economic, societal, technical, etc. All of these things. Ideally, you'll be operating just all systems go, and you don't even have to worry about this. But from time to time, there are things that affect your business, such as, in 2020, the big thrust around the combating the COVID pandemic. There are sometimes times of great uncertainty in business where we fall into a recession. So you might just want to keep your eye on the external environment and ask yourself if any things going on are going to affect the plans that you've set out so far. For example, if the unemployment rate is extremely low, it might take you longer to secure space and to hire than it would in an ordinary economic cycle. Think about also making sure that you notify your contractors sufficiently ahead of time that you'll need them so that they can be ready to go when you need them and have the space and the time and resources available. So you want to think about those around you, your collaborators, your landlord, and also even think about procuring in advance the services of an accountant, a tax preparer, and so on and so forth. You don't necessarily need to pay all these people up front if you're waiting for the money to come in from your award, but you do need to make sure that they'll be ready when you need them. As a business, you also need to develop the internal infrastructure in order to hire and make employment agreements and so on and so forth. So you want to prepare your offer letters and your employment agreements in advance. If you haven't done that before, you may take some advice from the internet, or you may take some advice from an attorney, for example. All of those things are fine. You want to check your state requirements wherever you're located so that you can register for as an employer to collect workers' comp, report any new hires that you may need to report for statistical information, and so on and so forth. Several years ago, maybe about almost 20 at this point, I started with Cellular Dynamics, which ended up to be a very large firm well over 500 employees. But when I joined them, they had 3 employees and no awards. And one of the things we had to do early on was to literally create or develop an employee manual so that as you hire people to come in, they have a sense of what your expectations are, what your work policies and procedures are about everything from work hours to vacation to dress code, so on and so forth. And in fact, as you start hiring, you'll need to ensure that your intended hires are actually eligible to work in the US. So you'll be giving them forms for their own employment taxes and I-9 forms they'll need to fill out to verify their status as US citizens, etc. It's crucial also in the early stages that you have at least a rudimentary timekeeping system. The government will ask you to provide certain input about the time that your employees have worked in order that they're compensated, etc. And so at the very least, you'll need some kind of timekeeping system like a timesheet, just using an Excel form, maybe that you make up, or again, one that you find on the internet. You also may develop payroll guidelines. How frequently will you be paying people? What are the pay periods? What are the methods? Are you going to use direct deposit, or what other means are you going to use to pay your staff? And you'll want to create some very basic reporting structures. You know, who do the technicians report to? What kind of communication channels do you need to create? Do you need to have weekly staff meetings or monthly staff meetings? And all of these things help also to develop your company culture. I know a lot of times early stage firms are really stretched to provide a rich set of benefits. But what they might do in advance is provide a very fun and invigorating work environment. Again, several years ago, there was a small firm that worked in our science park along with Cellular Dynamics that used to run together at every lunch break. And then it got to the point where they were so good at running that they actually signed up for some triathlons or maybe some marathons of some sort with each other because they were very close friends. So all of these things are thoughts that you want to give some consideration to, again, if you've never started a business before. So obviously you're going to be given money and expected to return deliverables to the government. So it's crucial that in terms of managing funding, you have a bank account for your business. Your funds should not be intermingled with your personal funds. If you're the PI, for example, you have to set up a separate bank account. And ideally, you'll even give some thought to what are called dual controls. That is, if you start hiring people and you want to make sure that there's no fraud involved in your business, you might want to have a policy where if there's a check of a certain dollar amount that must be made, it may require 2 signatures. Or, for example, you may require someone who goes to pick up the mail or receive the incoming emails about your award. Perhaps you limit the possibility of that person to write checks, just in order to have, again, a kind of a control system for your funds so that they're used appropriately. Again, there have to be ways to record the employee time worked, turn in the timesheets, etc., as well as recording of expenses incurred, and lastly, of course, recording of any profits that you may have. You yourself might be capable of running something like QuickBooks Online or a similar accounting program, but if you're not, you might need to hire a small business accountant for a certain level of hours per week or per month, maybe 10 hours a month or something like that, 5 hours a week. It just depends on how complicated your needs are. But you want to think about, sourcing and finding a person to hire to do that. And the question comes up for some, should that particular service provider actually specialize in the managing of federal grants? Usually during a phase one award, you don't need to worry about that. You can have a person who does small business accounting for other types of firms, isn't necessarily exclusively involved in managing federal grants. However, once you get to phase two, the award amounts become much greater, 2 to 3 million at times. And in that case, you might want to think seriously about having someone who has the experience in managing federal grants. Why? Well, because they will bring things to you that you otherwise would not have thought about, as I'm doing today. But even at a sort of deeper level, because managing, a few $100,000 where your budget line items are pretty limited, your timeline is also very limited. That's not all that difficult. But if you have a 2-year grant award, for example, and you're managing millions of dollars at a time, that's a whole different scenario, and you may want a specialist for that. As the PI or the small business awardee, you also have to manage the deliverables. There will be certain reports required of you, often not many, perhaps only one, but depending upon the agency, you may have to report periodically, like once a quarter or once every 6 months. And there are also certain forms that include unique financial reports that are outside the realm of an ordinary type of report that you might prepare from an accounting software. So you have to prepare to do those things, think about the timing and plan ahead, because while you're doing all of the technical work and growing your business, preparing for phase two can come up very, very quickly. And if you have a successful phase one, you obviously want to put yourself in the best possible position to have also a follow-on phase two. That's where the big money is. Successful phase two applicants finish phase one on time and on budget, and ideally you'll have a desirable technical outcome. A final phase one report will be required, and that often includes reporting of data, which can take some time to put together, etc. And you may even want to think about relationship building with the agency. There are conferences that you can attend to meet the personnel from the agency who has created an award for you. Why might that be important? Well, agencies need successes in their portfolios, so they like having relationships with small firms that they begin to feel comfortable can deliver on the research and development. They need these successes because they too are vying for funding from the other branches of the government. And so these success stories are part of how they do that. And you yourself may well become one of their success stories along the way. So it often feels a little bit like hurry up and wait, or wait and hurry up. In this case, some agencies require certain more detailed financial information just before receiving an award. Again, I'm going to use NSF as an example. They have what they call just-in-time documents, or just-in-time requirements. Essentially, just before you are notified, maybe 2 weeks out, 10 days out, they might start popping things in your inbox, in your email, and say, oh, well, we need some more information from you. And they say that they need that in order to consider the award. The good news about that is if they're asking you for just-in-time documentation, usually, more often than not, it means you're going to be notified of an award. They wouldn't go to all that trouble if they didn't want to make an award for you. But the bad news is it comes very late in the process. And so someone, yourself or others, may have to drop everything else you're doing at that moment to prepare what's required in the turnaround time that you're given. Because often they'll say, okay, in 48 hours, I need this. In another, 3 days following beyond that, I need something else, etc. So it kind of goes, the dialogue goes like that. And, if you have proposed a scope of work that's very sort of semi-aggressive for the time that you have, what happens if you begin the work 1 or several weeks late? Well, it is possible at the end of your period of award to ask for a no-cost extension of time, and those are almost always granted. They certainly are easy to receive. But, if you pre-plan and think about some of these things in advance, you may save yourself the hassle of having to ask for a no-cost extension. And of course, once you receive your award notification, don't forget to celebrate. All the hard work that's gone into the things that you've done so far deserves to be celebrated with those who are on your team, those who've helped you, and so on and so forth. So take time to have a little fun and lift a glass perhaps, or however you celebrate. On the other hand, what if you're denied? What if you receive notification that you didn't receive an award? Well, we always say, try again. Proposal rejection is not at all uncommon. And it's obvious because the applicants are often first-time investigators, which means they've never been funded by the government before. And the agency's point of view is they wonder, how can they reduce the risk in funding you as an unfunded investigator? Agencies very much seem to value persistence with first-time investigators. So if you're a first-time investigator and you're rejected, please try again. We see so many resubmissions winning an award because they really value that persistence. If your initial submission scores well enough, just above the pay line, you are very likely to receive a review including very valuable feedback with the rejection. Such feedback, if you address it successfully, can almost ensure that you'll receive an award the second time around. Please be sure, though, to read all the instructions provided. Often this part of the process isn't published anywhere. It can, if you reach out to us, we can help you interpret things, etc. But you just have to carefully read the information that you were given. We use terms when we're in this realm that might be a little bit confusing, like revise, resubmit, rebuttal. Different agencies use different jargon. And so, again, we can help you sort through whatever's relevant for your own individual situation. Some refer to revise and resubmit, some refer to rebuttals. And if you say, for whatever reason, you don't reapply right away, if certain amount of time has elapsed before you try to resubmit, you can still revise the work and submit it as a new proposal. If you want to resurrect that, if you want to start over again, but too much time has elapsed. Now, any information that you get back, you want to read carefully and ask us for help to interpret any nuances. Sometimes the reviewer's comments can be hard to interpret, although I notice this seems to be changing a lot of late. Nowadays, more recently, reviewers are more willing to state specifically what to do in order to improve your work. They used to really stay away from anything that was prescriptive. However, reviews may be harsh, meaning you have a lot of work to do, and the page limit for rebutting may be very, very short, such as only one page. So you have to use discernment about where you're going to focus the remarks based on the feedback that you get. It's a good idea to group the reviewer comments by topic in order to limit the length of your response and meet the criteria that they give you. Now, this time delay, if you are rejected the first time around, the time delay is important for your business to consider because revising and resubmitting costs time. You may lose an entire award cycle while you're waiting for the feedback. A cycle may elapse and you may have to slip into the next window of opportunity, which can be anywhere from 3 to 4 months or even up to nearly a full year. Ask yourself, how does this affect the timing of your patents or anything else that has timing associated with it? Do you have access to other sources of funding? If the business demands that you keep working, the competition demands or your patents demand that you keep working, you may have essentially at some point done the work proposed, and the proposal might have to be entirely remade to reflect the new scope. On the right side of this slide, I put a graphic for the technology readiness levels because at some point you may move beyond the technology readiness level of what would ordinarily be a phase 1 application, and you might find yourself being able to then go either direct to phase 2 or perhaps even pursue some of the contracting agencies that expect you to have a higher TRL going in. Non-dilutive funding can still be a part of your funding strategy, and it may open doors to other agencies that you weren't eligible for before. So just as a quick review, and this is nearly my last slide, why do you pursue SBIR, STTR funding altogether? Well, you certainly want to develop new products or services for commercial sale, maybe establish a sole source marketing position with government agencies, but always, always, always the process is worth it for the strategies that you develop, the planning you do, and the people and partners you meet. Because no matter what happens, even if you're rejected, you've put a lot more, you've invested a lot more thought and care and time into thinking about your business. And these are crucial things for you as an entrepreneur and your own personal success. Please let us help you get started. The federal funding is available, but highly competitive. The planning can reap rewards. And we find that with our help, you're much likely to have a greater chance of success. So I'll leave this slide up and we'll move to Q&A. Glory or Marjorie, did you want to handle talking us through the Q&A, or how would you like to do that?
Welcome, everyone. Yes, absolutely. So we have a few questions here. We'll
Great.
start with the first one that says, how will you do the DoD pay with phase 1 in the latest BAA for the SBIR?
Thank you, Lyle. So DoD is one of those agencies that wants to become your customer. So they are unlike the National Science Foundation. They won't pay you money up front. You have to produce something that they want to pay for, even if it's a phase 1. Now, there are some rare exceptions. The DoD is starting to do these very tiny incremental fundings, like maybe 25,000 or something along that line, to have you better explore what their needs are. And those, I actually don't know without looking it up how they pay. I think they still pay as a reimbursement. But we could look that up if you contact us directly. We could look that up for you, and that way you'd have a certain answer.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering. Well, he submitted 2 more questions or a different part to it. So we continue with Lyle. He says, is using a PEO, professional employment organization, like Insperity or any
Mhm.
other are out there to handle all of the HR payroll stuff? Question mark.
Yes, yes. Thank you for mentioning that. I didn't mention PEOs, but rather than sort of put together on your own, say, for example, the payroll system, the accounting system, etc., it is possible for you to hire a PEO to do all of these things for you. As a business owner, you just want to look at the cost benefit of that. How much do they charge? What kind of value are you getting? Is it cheaper for you to hire an employee to do that, or for you to hire a service provider to just take care of all those things for you? I've had some experiences with PEOs and they're very solid. Obviously, they know their business. I don't have recent experience with how much they charge. So again, just like with any other vendor, you want to check your costs and make sure you have one that fits your needs. But it's absolutely something your small business can do. In fact, it looks like you're going on to mention some of the things in your next question, some of the things that they do.
Okay. Do you want to continue on to the next part of his question?
Yeah, it looks like, I'm not sure there's a question there. It looks like you're making some statements. Lyle says a PEO will handle background checks, benefits, paperwork, etc. You yourself as a small business owner, yes, sources the people, and then you can hire a PEO to handle that. Yeah, you're exactly right. I don't see a question there, but those are appropriate. That's something that I'm glad you brought up for the group.
Awesome. So we have another question from Kenneth Simmons. He says, my NSF SBIR submission status is submitted to NSF. They press for a sign for review. This seems correctly. What does that mean? I guess he's just looking for of his.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ken. My interpretation would be they're telling you that you've submitted the proposal, that the due date for it has passed, which obviously if you've submitted a proposal, yes, the due date has passed and it's out for review. So I see why you might think of those things as contradictory, but I think it's not telling you you've done anything wrong. It's just saying the due date is, you've met the due date, it's gone by, and they're assigned for review. So I think that's a normal response, and there's nothing that you need to do at this point except all those, lovely things that I mentioned during this webinar. You could give some thought to, but there's no action required on that particular email.
Great. Well, we have a few more questions here. Your webinar was full of information. So here we have G1 says, can we use a different email accounts for submitting the proposal from the pitch email account?
Oh, wow. Good question. So I'm going to assume in this case that you did your pitch using maybe a personal email, but maybe then an example scenario might be that you've since created a business, so now you have a business email. I think it doesn't matter because really the pitch submission comes back to you at an email address. But if you're asking about, in the meantime, you're getting ready to register your company or something like that, I don't see any problem switching emails now. However, once you start the more formal registration process, including SAM, System for Award Management, and some of these other things, then you definitely want to pick one account and stick with it. Don't change, or you will confuse several parts of the registration and just cause probably extra work and time for yourself to sort that out. So I don't see a problem at present, but please pick one very soon and then stick with that email. Make sure you monitor it, etc.
Great. Well, thank you for answering that. So we have another question that says, what website to register what register should we register to start the SBIR application?
Yep. Thank you so much, Wenjun. It depends on the agency to which you're applying. There are some parts of the registration process that are the same for nearly every agency. For example, the SAM registration. However, because agencies don't all use the same software for you to submit your proposal, there are parts that are extremely different. So without knowing which agency you're applying to, it's hard to answer the question about where to start. Why don't you contact us about that? And I say so also because, again, our services, there's no cost for our services. So if you contact us, we'll be sure to tell you the right answer. And as well, we may talk with you about ensuring that you're even applying to the right agency. It's surprising at times how, sometimes clients on their own might think, oh, I'm going to apply to so-and-so, it's the best fit for me. But often a part of our consulting services is to help you understand truly which one is the best fit for you. So I would encourage you to reach out. Again, no cost for our services.
Well, I know the team and the team of NJSBDC, they're very resourceful. So in whichever way you need help with, even with obviously with SBIR, but even with additional services, they are there to help you and guide you through your business process. So I would highly encourage you. We have our next slide where you are able to see the QR code. We're able to request information for counseling, and that is very, very important. We have time for one more question. It says, let me see, and pick one from here. Alexander Massey says, you must have a lease agreement before funds are received. What if you're a home-based business until funds are received?
Alexandria, thanks for the question. You absolutely don't need to have a lease agreement signed and have a space before you receive your funds, but there are certain things you can line up. For example, a letter of commitment from a landlord. If you need a space, if that's part of what you need to carry out the award. Without knowing the type of business that you are, some businesses never need to move out of the home. For example, if you're a software developer or something like that. But if you need a wet lab, if you need some kind of a facility, we have to, part of proving the robustness of your environment to receive an award may include getting a letter of commitment from someone who will lease you some space when you do need it. Again, that's a more granular answer. Feel free to reach out to us. We can understand your specifics and then better advise you. But I tried to give a kind of a general answer here now.
Great. So I brought the screen over for the counseling. Please make sure you scan this QR code to get additional help. Thank you so much for your time, Sherry. This was awesome. I took some notes. For next week, please scan this QR code to register. It will be about owner-revealing cybersecurity myths for small businesses. I will totally be attending that webinar because I love anything that has to do with security, especially for small businesses. You need to be able to keep your information secure, your clients' information secure. You want to make sure that nobody has access to your database, and that is very, very important. So make sure you guys scan this QR code over here. And let me click one more. Please know that this is part of our tech series. We are NJSBDC. Our number one thing that we do to help you guys is no cost pitch to proposal consulting. We provide training and events starting at zero cost, and we provide you with exclusive small business tech resources to help your business grow, thrive, and take it to the next level. I always say that my business is a great testimony of what the NJSBDC mentorship counseling can do for you. Thank you, Sherry, for your time. This was an awesome session. Make sure you guys follow for additional resources. You can go to our website, the red part here, and you will find additional videos from previous webinars. You will see mine there as well. You will see other videos from this entire series that Sherry has made and additional counselors with tons of great information. So make sure you watch the replays and see you to the next time. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.